Welcome to another episode of For Footballers Only. I'm Coach Mike,
I'm James Panay.
and we have a special guest in the house today. Please tell the folks your name.
I'm Craig Taswell. Pleasure to be on here, guys.
Yes. James, do you wanna briefly do the introductions for Craig and give him his flowers while he can smell them?
Yeah. So Craig's an awesome guy, man. Great soccer player. Once my roommate. We still a roommate forever. But I mean, I know Craig over 7 years now. And the reason why we have Craig on the show today, because this guy have a lot to say, especially not only about soccer, but just like the mental part of the game. So for our do, Craig, I mean, I don't want to steal your jewels. So I want you to tell the audience more about yourself.
So besides playing soccer my entire life, I'm a psychology major in college. I'm a neuroscientist now, so I'm a little bit from psychology, but that definitely influenced everything that I do. And soccer is integral to like me understanding like half the things that we understand about the brain. So it's a unique aspect, but it's definitely super valuable, I think. So
Nice. All right. So before we get into the psychology and the mental aspect of the game, of performance in the game, let's go a little into your football history, right? So where does your football story begin?
Oh wow! So weird. So I'm from DC, but I'm American. So I grew up playing football and basketball. I had to my mom made me go to soccer camp when I was like 6 one time. Played the game one time, fell in love with it, and I was like, yo, I'm playing this game. From then, I got like randomly, I was on a rec team. It was at Snickers and freaking off Kennedy Street in DC. And we won like every rec league, and then a couple of travel teams were at the game scouting, and they like came and like picked certain players out. But back then, travel soccer, and the soccer's expensive in DC. Like it's a rich person sport, kind of. And so like, my mom wasn't paying for that. So like the players they picked, they kind of like the team would pay for like certain players to get them like competitive edge. So we started out NCSL. My first team started out like in like Division 4. Sorry, I don't know what I'm saying. And we ended up being like Division 1. And then from then, I was like on the ODP team. I did some other things in between then, a couple other like teams here and there.
Yeah. So as a young footballer, especially when you were a kid, who were your football idols?
So it's funny. It's like for like the first 3 years I played, I did not watch soccer at all. Was that what you watch in like America? Like I don't know. I guess it was like not a thing. Although like I was on Team John Hart's, and we played DC United, so we go to those games sometimes. But like I had no idea about like the European side of like football. But as soon as I got into that, like I don't know, my first player that I was like super obsessed with, like I played the same position, was like Edgar Davids. So boys, he was special.
Yes. Okay, keep going. I'll chime in. I'll have something to say about that.
We talk about academics on this show a lot, man.
A lot. But go on.
No, so like it started there, and then like anything you care about, you started like looking at more and more of this stuff. And I was on YouTube looking at like highlight reels from like every player at a time, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how my viewing started, at least.
Yeah.
And eventually I became a Chelsea fan.
Okay.
So
Nice.
Me and James had that in common.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Chelsea fan as well.
Yeah, you do. Yes.
Yeah.
He's just not loud about it.
Yeah. But okay, actually, I want to go back to Davids. So, how did you and why did you become a fan of Davids?
Oh, it was like the most elegant, like defensive midfield style type soccer I've ever seen played, and that's where I played like majority of my time. It was like people like think of like defenseman as a certain type of like way, but like he wasn't that at all.
Right.
Like control the game like through this like. I remember my mom like didn't understand anything about this, but like she was like super dedicated, like taking me wherever. And like so she tried to like learn soccer, and she's like, "Why do you like this guy so much?" I'm like, look how like smooth like this thing just like looks when he does it and stuff like that. So became that thing. He's on that big Nike commercial, like the World Cup of like.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured you were gonna say something about the Nike commercial. Like it's actually like it's understated how impactful that commercial or those commercials were. Like the scorpion,
like on the ship.
Yeah, on the ship. So like people don't really understand. From an entire generation that like people just found one of those players and it just rocked with them forever. And like, the thing I always talk about David's the reason James is laughing is because David's he transformed that position, that defensive mid position in a way that it was never done before, and it still hasn't been done yet, right? Because not only was he like that what they call him the pit bull, like complete destroyer, but his offensive ability was so clean, like it would just go from like he steal the ball and then like some crazy dribble and some crazy pass, like it was just flawless, you know what I mean? Like so for me, and he had that he had flair and style, the goggles, the locks, you know what I mean? Like he
made it cool.
Yeah.
He was cool.
Yeah, I mean, for all intents and purposes, what I know is that he is a cool guy. So, okay, so besides Davies in football, you said you play basketball as well, right? So who were your idols in basketball?
So I'm like a weird like fan of like basketball. So I know like James is like a huge probably AI guy. The small guys love the guy. I was so Charles Barkley was my favorite player.
What? My bad. I never heard that one, but
what? He was amazing. Best player not winning a ring in the NBA. But in all honesty, like I totally respect like greatness. Like I love to see like the right things being like rewarded. Like I like even like Golden State's last run. Like I love that. I love seeing like the best team playing the best way it works. Like, as anyone who plays any game knows, that's not always the case. Sometimes you just outplay a team and you lose that day, and it's like the worst feeling in the world. I like to see greatness for like, winning, beneficial, like at the end. But I will say before this though is that I think Dino is the GOAT by far. Like to this day, my boys who played football like in like NFL or like in like college like that, like they all know Dino, and they can all talk about a tape or somehow they saw him do.
Ronaldinho.
I think Ronaldinho's the GOAT because like he made soccer fucking cool. Yeah. Like I remember his no look pass the first time he did that shit like in the game. Like, I remember all these moments of like he just did things that transformed how like people who like thought soccer was like soft or like weak was like that's kind of hard. That's dope as hell.
Yeah. So piggyback on like how you said right, like growing up and then like now how you started playing like basketball. You have like especially your mom didn't have no background in soccer, right? And then you went to rec league and then you fall in love with the game. So what kept you like keep going? Like, do you have like a mentor, someone that keep motivating you to keep doing it? Because you have no one that can support you. So what kept you going?
So like this probably talks to psychology, I guess, of soccer. I think soccer is the best game in the world because it's the most free. Like any other game, you can coach up to like a certain like level. Like in soccer, like be completely honest, like my travel coach was like Len Oliver.
Okay.
Like, when like the Olympic team, whatever, like Elvis played for him. Like it was like the whole. He's like DC soccer for like a huge part of it. And his thing used to always be like he's like, yo, like when them learn soccer, let them play soccer. He's like, if I ask like anyone here what position they play and they tell me a position, like I don't trust them because like soccer players don't have positions. Like if you play soccer, you can play almost anywhere in the field.
It's true.
And not only like that, it's like the freest game. Like like football is cool to me for certain, like American football is cool to me for certain components, but it's very heavily coached. Like at some point, like I love a game where like the wisdom can only be given to the players, and within the confines of that game, you got to figure out how to use that to win. And like that's why like there's no stoppages in the game, right? Like even like now, like we have like goal line technology, and like FIFA fights against it because it's like it kind of kills some of the purity of like soccer. And I understand it's like that's why I like love it. It's the most. I wrote this article when I was in 5th grade about this. I was like, it's the freest game in the world. There's no game more free. Like, how do you coach a soccer player? You want to say a throw in like you run here? Like that's not going to work out like 80% of the time. So all you do is you teach them the right things to do, and they gotta know when to do it, when not to, and like that's to me is like it's art. It's beautiful. It's like this, and you see it when you see good soccer, man. There's nothing like it. Like when you see a certain, it's just like
yeah.
I don't know.
Man, I really love that breakdown, man. It sounds like chess.
I'm telling you, you know about my chess games.
Good, good. That's a good way to break it down.
At what point, you know, still going back to you as a young player, at what point did you know, you started playing rec, you said, at 6. And so at what point did you know, okay, I'm playing football and I'm playing basketball, but I really think football is the direction I'm going to go in?
So weirdly enough, like it wasn't like at that point, wasn't my best sport. Actually, like at that point, I played striker. I was super small. Like, I don't know. I was like, I think at that point I was underage, like undersized for my like, but I played like wing. I was super like quick and stuff. But I played baseball and I played basketball. And I was really good at both. To this day, like my coach still says like baseball probably was way for you to go. But like after these like injuries. But I enjoyed soccer more. Like baseball kind of bored me sometimes. Basketball was super like fun, but like I just enjoyed soccer like more, like for all those like reasons I said like before. I guess it just like was like free.
So, I mean, I know you enjoy it, but at what was it? You know,
yeah.
A teenager? Was it something that happened? Because at some point you had to make a decision that I'm going in this direction, and I'm leaving these other things behind.
It was the point when I made the ODP team for Maryland, and I wasn't like there was too many, like at that point like just too many things for my mom to like do. Like I couldn't make it to all the practices. I had to choose a sport, and they kind of like going into like high school, they heavily like want you to choose a sport.
Yeah. And
so I snuck baseball in for like a year or two just because it was in the spring, and then like Maryland soccer's in the fall. But that's not how it is everywhere and stuff. But like, pretty soon, like going into my freshman year, I had to choose. I just chose soccer because I liked it more.
Okay. So going back to what you brought up about Ronaldinho being the GOAT. We have this question on here that we ask folks, and every time folks get nervous, it goes crazy, right? So the question is, who are your top 11 players of all time?
Position wise, like ultimate team, or just like ever?
Yeah, 11. Like just 11. Top 11.
All right, so I'm gonna give this like a. So I believe that like athletics have only gotten better. As like the more we learn, the better we train athletes. Thus, like the better they get. And so, though I have a lot of respect for like the history of the game, I do think that they're just we have made freak athletes. Like there's no profession in the world I think has like gone as forward in such little time as athletics. And it's because there's a lot of money there. It's because like there's all these things, but like records are being broken like every like even in the NBA every freaking year. Like we watch like an average team with a great player, and I don't even like him like break this like triple double record. And I think Russell Westbrook isn't like he's that's the kind of player I want to play with. and that goes to psychology of his game. But like he broke this like record that hadn't been broken in like forever, and like he did it on a bad team. So I truly believe like athletics has gotten better every generation. Now with that being said, so like my team is going to be comprised mostly of players from like this generation and like the slight past.
Okay. All right. Good. Go ahead.
But 11's still going to be tough.
Whatever you say, you have to live with it because
I know.
when people hear your list,
I know.
You gotta get some calls. And,
I need some caveats here. So it's not position wise. I need something. Hold on.
So it don't have to be in any order, Craig. It could be whatever.
Yeah, no, there's no order. It's just 11. Yeah. I'll count you to make sure it's 11.
All right. Well,
it's tough. It was tough.
Don't hold it against me. I'm on the spot here. It's not me thinking about anything. All right. I mean, I'm gonna start with Messi, Ronaldo. I'm gonna go. This is not in order though. This is Although I do think Messi's in order. I'm gonna go Xavi, Iniesta. I'm gonna go Drogba, Lampard, Gerrard. So I'm gonna go Ashley Cole.
Ooh, Chelsea.
Well, I'm at 8. So I gotta name a keeper too though. And I got what?
No, I mean you don't have to. You don't have to.
That's gonna get tough. It's gonna get
It was tough.
I gotta go Davids.
Okay.
You got 2 more.
I think because I'm not sure he's been a better center back. You know, I gotta go with Chelsea's captain for forever. I gotta go with Terry.
Yeah.
Okay.
One more. That's a good list.
This is actually. So I like someone a lot, but like the last 2 years has not been great for them. You know, I think I thought the word of Hazard, and I don't know what's going on right now, but I'll go Zidane.
But you didn't say Ronaldinho.
Ronaldinho.
Oh my God.
It's tough. I bet I just.
He's definitely in it for me.
I mean, you gotta get some calls.
There's so many great players. It's wild. It's like that's the other thing about soccer. Like it's just like you can do this for like American football and like NBA. It's like it's one league pretty much. It's like
that's
true.
You can't equate some of this like this. It's tough.
No. I mean, it is, and you know, it's part of the question. What it reveals is like from that question, I could tell that you're heavily an EPL guy. You're heavily Chelsea. So I mean, it's just there, right? Like
exactly. It's like you can't.
That's either Chelsea, Liverpool.
Yeah.
And then you brought in, of course, you had Barca in there, but it was just heavily EPL.
I was going to say.
So let's kind of, transition into, what you do now, as your current state, what you do professionally and how that relates to the game.
Football, yeah.
So I've always been super interested in like human behavior. And so I was a psychologist like after college for a while, and like I didn't like the practice too much because although we could help like people, we didn't really understand what was happening in the brain that made certain things possible. Like things like depression, particularly I worked with like a lot of kids with autism at the time. So I wanted to kind of really understand like the fundamentals like underlying a lot of these like disorders, because most mental health disorders have very similar characteristics of certain underlying things, and most times it's a malfunction of the reward system. Now, like this starts like before like any of this, like I was super in psychology, like so how like literally you just told me like you heard like my players, you could tell exactly what soccer I watched. You could almost tell, right?
Yeah.
I could ask I'm so trained in human behavior. I could ask a person like 2 questions, and I could tell you what position they play in soccer, because we all leak certain things like that like you can't, like you don't plan for. It's just like, it's what you saw, it's what you do, it's like what you believe, right? And so like fundamentally, there's like, I forget the name of this book that my college coach gave me when I was a junior, but it was pretty much like there's like a different psychology between like strikers and defenders. Like if you meet like 2 soccer players, you can almost indefinitely tell how to tell up the game, like whether they're a striker or like a defender. And like the biggest like difference is that like typically like strikers are more like risk taking, which simply means in the game is like they don't care if the ball gets like stolen from them. They're going to try something like new, and they're going to like either they're going to like beat someone and score a goal, or they'll look the ball will get like stolen. But when you're a defender, it's like quite the opposite psychology, where you can't making that mistake is like the worst part in the game. So I remember when I got to college, there was like this like striker, and they're like, listen, like he doesn't check for the ball, doesn't do anything, but like he always finds the net. And like that was like goal. Like no one cared. Like no one cared what he did outside the game. Like he scores. And like what he did was like he knew how to find like the net, right? We say that like in soccer, it's like a term. It's like there are players who know how to score, whether they're doing the right thing or the bad thing or whatever. Like they just know how to score. And I just remember being so frustrated, but like that's what he could do. Touch the ball twice, he scored 2 goals. But then like there are like players who like are just like better skilled. For example, like you put them up there and it isn't the same type of thing, you know. And so it just comes this like thing where like there is a psychology that's different between 2 types of players. And going from that, like you think about everything else in people, it's like, okay, well, what makes this person like this and like that and like that? And I want to understand all this stuff.
Yeah. So to piggyback on that, right, Craig? So what are sports psychology? And the second question to that, and how can sports psychology help athletes?
So there's a old, like, I think it's either an old Kobe quote or it's an old football quote, but like, or it might be partially part of the Jordan quote, but it pretty much is like, it's like great scorers and great quarterbacks, they have amnesia, right? So they have short-term memory. It's like quarterbacks can't focus on their mistakes. Like they need to just go out and like keep like throwing it, right? And when you look at the greats, like that's actually exactly what they do. It's just like dynamic, and like that's all psychology. But the role reverses when you're like, again, on the defensive end. Like I can speak to like how you play. Like James is a phenomenal soccer player. James can play anywhere on the field. In fact, when James plays like up top and like these like tournaments, he scores goals like at will. But you always end up playing in the back. Yeah. On like any team that like of like your level, and why is that? And it's because you're less mistake prone. Like you rather not make a mistake than like score a goal. Rather someone that's like willing to turn the ball over 8 times and score 1 goal is like different. And so it's like this thing that you like see. And I'm the same way. Like to some degree that hurts like my game perhaps, something like that. But you know, if you're good at what you do.
That's a good analogy.
So is this so how long have you been either studying this or practicing?
So I've been in neuroscience probably for like 6 years now. I mean, I've been in psychology since like high school somewhat, but like certain like ideas and stuff like came like when like with true analyzation of like self and like reading like different like things. And then like when I was a psychologist, like you have like different like practices, and like you go to a couple like sports conferences and you hear like different things, and like you're like, oh shit, like you know, there's something like to that.
Yeah. So as a are you practicing neurosciences?
Yeah. So I study learning and decision making in like monkeys, rhesus macaques to be exact.
Yeah. So are you in your practice or your research, I guess, are you finding, you know, information that can be useful, or that you or your core researchers, etc., have published pieces to expound on that are useful for athletes, in decision making or in training, etc. And then, if you have, is this particular to adult athletes? Is there some breakdown of the research or analysis between the differences between adult athletes and youth athletes, etc.? So
So I will say, like, first that, like, I'm not positive I'm stating the newest research in, like, for example, the sports psychology field, because I'm not sure how up to date I am, but like I do keep up to date, but like it isn't my particular field, like, by itself. So I don't want, like, if someone knows, like, something that came out, like, more recent, like,
okay,
But that kind of, like, that analogy I just gave about, like, the idea that, like, fundamentally, like, psychologically how, like, these players view the game differently is a better predictor of their, like, position. Is in learning, there's an idea that's one of the leading theories. So that has to do with, like, your, like, left and, like, right brain, like, reward systems. And if you're more dominant in one or the other, like, one is way more okay with mistakes, so to speak, than the other. So these are the players who will shoot from, like, half field because when they were 12 one time they made it, and you're like, yo, we were on a fast break. Like, why would you do that? But they do end up hitting some of those. It's like this, like, wild thing. They tend to have different, like, brains fundamentally than, like, the person who's, like, super logical saying, no, like, we should get the closest shot we can get type of thing.
Yeah. So would you say, so as a practical advice for, someone listening to this, and if they're, in the development stages, in coaching, they're coaching youth, etc., and they notice early on, at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I mean, pretty much up till 15, they notice that some of their players are where essentially what you just described, where they just, do what a lot of coaches would consider crazy, like, and would try to restrict them and, confine them into a certain way. No, don't do that, et cetera, and even penalize them by putting them in, in the back, or, like, or on the wing, or whatever it is. Are you suggesting that that's actually counterproductive, and it would be better to, put them in the position what they're naturally inclined to, based on the way they fundamentally view the world and the way they think?
So I actually think it's the opposite. I think soccer is, like, one of the more advanced sports because it's not so position oriented, and we end up doing the opposite. So, like, in soccer, like, what happens is they'll put you, like, in the back. If you ever, like, watch, like, kids, like, do a soccer scrimmage, like, who just playing soccer, like, with their friends, what you end up, like, noticing a lot of times is, like, the better players originally, they end up, like, straying to the back because they'll win the ball and then just, like, and this, talking about, like, children here, like, it's like this thing that happens. So I actually think that soccer's advantage is that, like, we do put them in different positions. We're like, no, go over here and do this, and that makes them more flexible in the end. And so, like, I made a remark earlier, like, I played, like, striker. I was super small at, like, one point, and, like, one of the reasons why I was, like, better when I became, like, a defender or defensive midfielder is because I had certain skills, because I was undersized at first. So I played the game different before I got bigger and faster than, like, everyone else. Like, I grew a foot going into my freshman year of high school, like, a legit foot over the summer. Wow. So I was, like, a small kid at one point, and, like, how I played the game was very different before I got, like, faster. Which then I had skills that, like, bigger players didn't have because I had to before. So I think that like it's the opposite. I think that keep moving around, like have them play positions that they don't play because it makes them better like soccer players. Maybe not perhaps just better pure defenders. I mean, I don't see a hard measurement. I would assume it does, but definitely makes you a better player. And the contrast is basketball, right? Like if you are over like 6 foot before you're 12, they're going to have you being a big man. And what happens is a lot of big men don't have any ball skills. Anthony Davis is like one of the best big men in the NBA right now. And that's because he was short. He played point guard before he grew. So he has ball skills. He can shoot. And now he's like this big man. Like he has this whole virtue that like no one else has. So I think the same thing holds true for soccer. It's like you make good players and like you're great.
Yeah. So what you're suggesting is that even if someone shows the inclination to either be a defender or an attacker early, it's still useful to play them in different roles because then they develop more as a complete player.
Definitely. And they definitely understand the counterpart better too, right? Like you understand a striker if you played striker before, you know they're going to like somehow like you have better something they're going to try to do versus if you never ever played a position before. And you're just a better player. Like I was there was this article that came out when I was at camp, and there was this thing that was like professional players aren't in much better shape than like college players. And I thought it was a joke. So I was like, I think they're like in way better shape. But like they make the game look so simple sometimes, right? Like it's like there's no pressure when they're passing around the back. But like if you like go through like degrees of like levels of like college play, for example, like that's like true in Division I. You go to Division III, like just mad pressure. Like the game, people play it different. Like they'll just run straight at you because the skill isn't enough to like make you not do that, right? Yeah. And so there's like it's just like you can like see all these things like things in like the natural environment. It's like this like wow thing, and it's interesting when you watch it. It's like damn, I get it. Like I remember like there's some things you play like don't rush them. Like do not like. Mm-hmm. Even when we play pickup, like, James was like, "Yo, don't rush Jimmy." Like he's going like he's this old man. Like he's going to embarrass you if you rush him. Like
Jimmy, like you know who Jimmy is.
Don't rush Jimmy. Like, and it's like this thing, like, and so, yeah, I mean,
so yeah, I have a question, Craig. Right, just so we'll like mental toughness, right? Can you teach it, or is it something like athletes are born with?
So I think you can teach it. I think so far, how we equate it to people, it's kind of been natural, but certainly you can teach because it's a behavior, and you can teach any behavior. Okay. That doesn't mean that we're good at teaching it. Like we're good at teaching a lot of things, but teaching that might be something that like we're not that great at. Typically, people who try to teach things, people who get it, who do it. And sometimes people who get it and do things aren't the best teachers.
Gotcha.
That makes sense. But I think you can teach it. Like there's certain like things, right, where like no matter who you are, you will work out better if you have a coach or like some kind of trainer, because they can push you more than you will push yourself. Mm-hmm. Like this is true to the best athletes in the world. Like Roger Federer, like, was at the top like of tennis for a long time. He fired his coach at one point, and it wasn't a direct correlation, but eventually started losing to like Nadal. Because like it doesn't matter how good you are, right? Like none of us can push ourselves more than like someone else can. Mm-hmm. And what they say, like they say, a great coach is like someone who pushes someone a lot farther than they could go, but not too far where they quit. And it's like in learning, we call it like there's this like perfect boundary where like an animal or organism, a person, like needs to be challenged enough that they pay attention and want to learn, but not too difficult enough where they feel like they can't do it because they quit. And things like that's true for all organisms. That line where it's true for is what differs between people. Mm. But it can be taught. It can be conditioned, if that makes sense.
And so do you have some ideas on how to essentially to teach that without crossing the line, right? So as a, you know, if you're coaching youth, to push the kids to that point where it's extremely difficult, but it doesn't break them to the point where, you know, they're no longer interested and, you know, they don't want to play anymore.
So, yeah. First I'll say, yeah, but I will say that, like, naturally, like, we all do. Like, part of what we do with, like, the whole team running or the team push-up is that, like, we want them to, like, somewhat be competitive with each other, but we also want our team to kill each other at any point. But we want them to want to push each other, right? Like, they always say, like, they say Kobe Bryant's so fucking great because, like, not only was he the best player, but he was the hardest worker. And so it's different. Like we've all played soccer and or sports our entire life. It's different when the best player works the hardest, right? Like, everyone works harder. But beyond that, there are things like that can do. And like psychology wise, like there's like a couple staple things. So there's an old analogy about like a toad in hot water. And what they say is that, like, if you put a toad in boiling hot water, he will jump out every time. But if you put a toad in warm water and you slowly heat it up, it will sit there till it dies. And what it means, it's an analogy for conditioning and how all organisms work, is that like intermediate steps toward the final goal help us like get there. So it's not that, like, and this is true for all behavior. It's not that you should, like, people don't invest money in like the stock market, right? Because they think they need so much money, but like that's not actually what you should do. What you think about is like very small. You should, like, in anything you can think of, like they always say, start very small. You can build to that, and that's the way to do it. And like psychological wise, for anything that's difficult.
Cool. And then, so another question for you, Craig. So, like, do you have any advice for like athletes, right, or even from an adolescent age, right? Kids that deal with like anxiety when they're doing performance or doing competition. How do they deal with it, like fear and confidence issue and anxiety? Because as an athlete, people definitely deal with that.
Yeah, so that's tough. I would say that, like, that's something that, like, perhaps I like struggle with. Like, on any day of the week from like a certain position, I could hit a ball 30 yards on a dime. If I'm on a breakaway, I will somehow find a way to hit the post. It's like this. It's a psychological thing for me, and like it's a fallacy, and I know it. Even me knowing it, it still happens, right? And so I would say that that's a tougher question, and it does depend on like what position I play. But like in that same book I mentioned earlier, that my coach, like, there was like this statement that the author made, and I forget who wrote this book, but he was like one of like Pele's like best friends, something like that. I forget the exact guy's name, but it was like the greatest fear of making a mistake is the greater likelihood of making a mistake. And think about that statement, right? It's like kind of profound. It's simple and it makes like sense. But like, it's like, is it true? Here's like the analogy they give. They're like, right now, if I told anyone to like walk across like a pole that is sitting on the ground, like it's like a 1-inch pole, you gotta like walk across it. Most people could do it without thinking. Now, imagine if I put that pole 1,000 feet in the air, nothing underneath it. Just walking across the pole. It's the same behavior, but it becomes much more difficult. And when you get to that realm, there is a personality type that is better at that thing than not. And that's to do with like not caring about certain consequences, kind of. It's like it's a weird mix. There's other like profiles that I don't want to like mention, like these aren't locks for anyone.
Got you.
Like you can always be whoever you want to be, like, and like but things tend to like co-correlate.
Okay.
That makes like sense.
So basically what I'm getting is like when you're having like anxiety and fear and lack of confidence, you have to try. Even if you make mistakes, you're still learning.
Oh, so yeah. Oh, yeah. Always. Oh, yeah. So there's no way to beat it without doing that.
Okay.
And like it goes back to the old like saying like the only person that loses a fight is the person who stays down.
Okay.
You got to keep like doing it. Like you only get past anything by doing it. You get better. No matter what you do, like you're better off doing it more than not.
Okay.
Like my first favorite quote, I named all my favorite quotes today, is like the harder I work, the luckier I get. I think about that statement, right? It's so true though. Like Steph Curry probably hits more lucky threes than anyone, right? but he shoots more threes than anyone.
Mm.
So is he getting lucky, or is his form that much more locked in to everyone else? Like, he's done it more. He's done it 1,000 more times than anybody else. Of course, he's gonna it's gonna happen better for him sometimes. Like, practice does make permanent.
Yeah. I mean, actually, to do a deep dive on the piece you just said, the whole practice piece. So, from a psychological standpoint, what are some good tips or strategy that let's say either a coach that's coaching youth or a youth player can employ to get better, right? So one of the things, it's probably common knowledge now is this whole idea of deliberate practice, right? So well-intentioned practice. But anyway, I want you to, kind of provide some tips or strategies.
I think that's like, I think you guys are probably like, there's like this thing that's like in practical setting people are a lot better at than like practitioners. So we study all the data, but like there are certain things in the world that like people who are doing it are way better at than like the people analyzing it. And like, I've seen you guys coach. I've seen these like things, like you guys get it. Like, I mean, repetition is the key for a lot of things, but talking about soccer here, right? So freedom, like to like play. And I've been to the tournaments. I think you're doing it well. I think that's how you do it. Like you can't make someone do enough repetition at certain things. Like at some point that comes on their own, but teaching them, like it's all like giving them like just an old like story. It's like there's no new problem in the world. It's that everyone's had the problem you've had before, and they wrote it down in the book. Your key is to find the book. So I always think that coaches' jobs, stuff like that, is to pass the book along. And if like I can spend 2 less years searching than you did, I have potential to be 2 years better, And that's how we like get the legacy growing and stuff like that. And so, I mean, I think we'll come to the word athletics, particularly like you guys, I think we're maxing out at like the teaching level right now. Like it's fantastic. When I study learning and I do all these things to make people like learn and stuff, and like I employ a lot of mechanisms that like I've learned by playing and like watching people coach and stuff, because like we're so good at that.
Yeah.
But we're bad at it in other places in life. So.
Yeah.
But like, look at the school system.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. What are now you're no longer an active player, but you're still you're a neuroscientist and you still have love for the game. So what's your ultimate goal as a contributor to the beautiful game? What's your ultimate goal?
So it's like the same like for like life. It's kind of like what I just like said. There's like in the early 90s, I forget what movie it was, but there was this movie that was like, they pretty much made this like synopsis that like people only use like 10% of their brain. And it was a scientific study that was completely taken in the public eye, but like there's like this truth to it that like we only use like a certain amount of our brain, and like a part of that is like just to like be like normal, which is why like sometimes people get like strokes and it kills one side of their brain and they become like these brilliant artists, and all that's happening is that like more power is going to one area of your brain than it was going like globally. And so my thought was, I'm in neuroscience, is like, let's pretend that everyone works at 10% of their brain. If I can find a way to get everyone to work at 11%, the world is infinitely better already. Like think about if you had one more good day, like when you're on. I used to tell my students this. So I sometimes coach. I mean, not coach, but I teach at UMD, like undergrad. And I was just be like, yo, like there are days where your brain's working so well, like you feel that, and you're like, you could like literally solve like any problem. And there are days, some days where like 2 + 2 is like difficult. And like we all have those days. Like that's not unique to like a person more intelligent. Like, we all have days where like we're just on our things, and there are things behind it, like diet, stuff like that. But like, if we can figure out a way to get everyone to like perform like just a little bit better, the world's like infinitely better. And like I feel the same way with like soccer. And
that's a great advice. That's a great information. So I have one question for you, Chris. So because I feel like it's a question a lot of people don't ask, right? So there's a lot of like athletes that have dedicated their life into sports. It could be football, American football, basketball, or whatever, right? Their entire life, from adolescent kids to playing teenage years and wanted to go professional, but they never had a chance to, right? Because I know a lot of people are dealing with that type of, it can be depression and mental issue. Like what type of advice do you have for those type of players or those athletes that try their best but never got to it?
That's like, I have a weird view to that question, just because I think the opposite is like true so much often. So I remember I grew up in like inner city DC. Mm-hmm. First, like, it wasn't cool to play soccer. Second of all, it's like the kind of place where like when the teachers in like first grade asked everyone what they wanted to be, every kid said like a professional athlete, and the teachers would like smack it down. Mm. So I out of college, I was writing a book. I've not finished this book yet. I got distracted for numerous reasons. But the opening of the book was about like that thing about how like the teachers like beat these like kids' dreams like down. And the thing was that where I was like, and like I was smart enough to like I could see the trend. So I gave an answer they wanted. I said something like a lawyer, right? And I got all this like praise where I was like them. The ironic part about this is like I did the stats years later. Like where I'm from, you are much more likely to be a pro athlete than you are to be a lawyer. And it was this thing that like people just thought that was a safer job. That was like cooler. This like teachers wanted to be like this thing, and like I think it has ill effects on like some kids. And so my things are like, yo, doesn't matter what you're doing, yo, if you give it like your all, if you work at it and you don't quit, you will find a niche in it. And I remember there's this guy on Instagram that like when I started following, it's like his name's like an NBA lethal shooter. And this guy was trying to be in the NBA forever, and he never made it. You know what he does now? He teaches shooting to NBA players. Like he didn't like quit on this thing. And I said the question was hard to answer because like, yo, if you're willing to put in the work effort and not stop, you're gonna be good at whatever. You will find your role in this like thing. I think so often we kill dreams, and most times it's because of us, like ourselves, rather than like the actual person. Like there's a correlation that says that like you can like just like we watched the World Cup one year, and no, it was Super Bowl. We're determined like when he like got that bat down and the Seahawks like won, and all these people were outraged at how much he like taunted. And then every athlete that I knew came out and was like, you guys have never competed at like a high level to not understand like what that means. But it was always these people who like were fighting for like mediocrity. Like they didn't understand how much effort, like that bat down took him practicing like 1,000 extra hours when no one else was doing that shit. And he had to keep going. Like it was this whole, like, I just remember that like, and so I'm always on the side like, yo, as long as you're going to work at it, you're going to figure it out type of thing.
Cool.
This is a good one, man. I feel like I get so many jewels, man. Thank you, man. Whew.
How can folks get in touch with you? Any social media handles?
I do. I have Instagram. I think it's CT3_DMD. I'm back on there. Snapchat's like the same thing, but those two.
Nice. Any last words for the football community in particular? We as we with DC11, we're coaching youth from 3 to 16, 17. So any words of wisdom or advice or tips?
First, I want to say thanks for having me on. And I want to tell everyone that is a student to listen to your coaches. They know what they're talking about. Like, just listen. Trust me, it will save you a huge headache in the end. Just listen. Mm-hmm. I could tell a story about that, about when players like feel a little bit insecure, and I listen to your coaches. You have some good ones here. Listen to them. And listen, I'm 4 months out of my second surgery, so I'm coming back soon. So you gotta be ready.
Nice. What you have? Another knee surgery?
Yeah, man. Yeah, double ACL surgery this time now. So double ACL. But I will be the healthiest I've been since college. In a month. So.
Cap State is waiting for you, man.
It's tough.
I'm not sure I'm going there, but
it's tough.
I'll definitely come practice. I gotta be careful. I'm getting old, but
yeah.
But Craig, man, it's great having you, man. We appreciate your time, man. It's a great one, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Thanks a bunch, man. It's a pleasure. It's a good one.
Cool, man.
Hope to come back with some more information at some point.
Yeah.
I'll be a recurring guest.
Yeah, well, of course. That's the goal.
I need a shirt, though. I see that shirt now.
All right, man. All right, Craig.
All right, easy. Have a good night.
All right, man. Later.